for the shark bait. Shark bait!
Now, in this age of technology and electronic test kits and probes and sensors and controllers, some of us have forgotten all about the good old-fashioned test strips. And no, they're not antiquated, they're not obsolete, but they're one of the best ways to test your tanks, especially when you have multiple tanks. And one of the things that I've kind of gotten used to is using the 5-in-1 test strips by API. Now, I'm not getting sponsored by API, I just use them because I have about 13, 14 different tanks set up, including a pond. And the good thing about these test strips, and they can be used for both saltwater and freshwater tests. And the quickest way to compare, especially saltwater, is to take a quick dip, match it up to the chart on the side, and move on to the next tank. And as you can see, especially for pH, it gives you a safe range. So if you have coral that's not doing well in one tank but is doing well in another tank, this is the best way to compare quickly and see just why that is. So let's take a look. Now in the basement, I have 1, 2, 3 saltwater setups, and I can easily compare them by just taking 3 test strips, put them in 3 separate systems, and compare the parameters real quick and easy. So let's do that. So now right here you can see I have test for tank number 1, Nano Reef, test for tank number 2, local species reef, and test for tank number 3, the 11-gallon cube sitting side by side. So all I have to do now is match the colors, and basically for these tests I look at pH, nitrate, and I do start to look at a little bit of the carbonate hardness, only because magnesium and some of the carbonate hardness does attribute to your corals doing well or not so well. So I match them up. You just put them side by side, match the colors. You can see in this one, GH I don't really look at because it's salt water. But here I would say that the carbonate hardness, I know that's hard for you guys, let me hold it this way. Carbonate hardness falls well in the realm of about 40, between 40 and 80, and the pH is running 8.0, and that is in the main tank right here where you have the most coral. Now nitrate is pretty low, being less than 20, is pretty close to 0, so that's a good thing. And the same thing for the nitrite, so it's hard to see here, but I assure you. And that is for this tank. So pH is good, nitrate and nitrite are good. You can see they're pretty clear. I can give you a close-up, they're pretty close to clear. And that is the main one where I have the most growth taking place. So now the whole thing is comparing the other 2 tanks. Quick to do with the strips, turning it this way so you can see. So now we're looking at the local species tank, which is more or less just a little oil water. I started using some of the ocean water that I filtered before I put in here. So interesting to see what the results are. Let's go to the strip. Once again, we skip the general hardness. I apologize in advance for the lighting because it's under the tank lighting, really hard to match it. But just to show you how easy and quick it is to just get a quick comparison between tanks. You're not focused on the exact numbers, but the comparison between the tanks. If you see a coral is not doing good in one and doing better in another, gives you a quick explanation of where your parameters are. So we can see here that the KH is about the same in the little 40 range, and the pH is a little bit lower, more in the 7 to the 7 range, 7.5 range, which is expected because I don't dose it. But it's pretty light in that tank. And of course, I don't have any coral in there. Nitrate and nitrite. Let me switch fingers. Nitrite is pretty close to 0, but nitrate you can see is a lot higher. Nitrite is pretty much close to 0, but the nitrate is pretty high in this tank. And that's of course because this tank hasn't been running as long as the other ones have. Now let's compare the parameters in the Aqua Springs BioCube, the 11-gallon cube. Very interesting because that tank has been running a pretty long time. Once again, we skipped the GH because that's not a saltwater test. Interesting that the KH stays around the same number in all of the tests, around 4.0. That's probably a salt parameter in general. But the pH in that tank is much more stable, above 7.5. And let me switch fingers, put it down, switch fingers. You can see now, while the nitrite number is really low, the nitrate number is much more stable. Focusing on the numbers here, is closer to the 20 right here, whereas the local species tank was a little higher. But that is not the point. The point is, look how quick and easy with the test strips I can go to 3 tanks, dip it, match it, and compare it. You're not getting the exact number, but he can definitely tell you where the issue is between one tank and another. Since this tank is newly cycled, I'm expecting it to have a much greater nitrite and nitrate difference than these tanks that have been running for years, and this one years and years, this one about 3 or 4 years. So quick test. Let's look at the freshwater. Tank number 1 is going to be the Super Cube. Tank number 2 is going to be my little bog project that I haven't talked a lot about, but you can see there's only 1 beta in there, and I'm thinking of adding some more fish, so I'm gonna test it. And system number 3 is going to be the container pond, the 6-foot system with a majority of the fish in it right now outside, going through natural changes. I just added some more fish in it, so I'm really curious to see what the difference is between the systems. So let's take a look. Immediate comparison without going into each individual one. Tank number 1, tank number 2, and the tub outside. Tank number 1 and tank number 2 are very identical, but when we get to the outdoor tub, we could see immediately that the carbonate hardness as well as the general hardness is much different than those of the tanks inside the house, and that's because these are powered by rainwater and not tap water. So those numbers are way different, as well as the pH. The pH is considerably lower in the outdoor tub and in the Super Cube. Super Cube mainly because I use water from the outdoor tub to do water changes. So really quick, really easy, and really efficient, in my opinion, in checking multiple tank parameters. So in final conclusion, I love all my test kits, especially the digital ones. They help me out a lot, but when it comes to testing a lot of tanks at once, nothing beats the 5-in-1 test kits for quick analysis, breakdown, easy results, and comparison between one tank and the next, especially when you're breeding fish. So I hope this helps you guys out. Leave your comments and message boards below. Love, peace, and hair grease. Until next time, this is D, and I'm out.